The text message arrived at 2:17 a.m. on a Thursday in late October. "Get out of my house. Tonight. Don't come back." Ethan stared at the screen until the words blurred. His thumb hovered over the reply button for a full minute before he typed the only thing he could think of. "Why?" No answer came. The three little dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then nothing. He waited another 10 minutes in the dark guest bedroom of the house he had called home for the past 11 months. Then he heard the front door slam downstairs. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Ethan sat up on the narrow mattress, heart hammering against his ribs. He had known this moment was coming. He had felt it growing like a storm cloud for weeks, but knowing and facing it were two different universes. The bedroom door opened without a knock. Pastor Daniel Whitaker stood in the doorway, still wearing the same gray sweatshirt he had on when they ate spaghetti with the kids 4 hours earlier. His face looked carved from stone. "You need to leave," Daniel said. His voice was low, almost gentle, which made it worse. "Right now." Ethan swallowed. "Can we at least talk about—" "No," Daniel cut him off. "We've talked enough. I can't do this anymore." The silence between them stretched until it hurt. Ethan stood slowly, as though sudden movement might shatter something fragile. He was taller than Daniel by 3 inches, but in that moment he felt small. "The kids are asleep. They don't need to see this." Ethan glanced toward the hallway where 5 bedroom doors stood closed. He thought of Mia's stuffed giraffe that she still carried everywhere at 8 years old, of Caleb's skateboard propped against the wall, of the twins arguing over whose turn it was to feed the goldfish, of little Sophie who still called him a fan, because she couldn't say it yet. He looked back at Daniel. "You're really doing this?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I have no choice." "You always have a choice," Ethan said quietly. Daniel flinched as though struck. For 1 second the mask cracked. Something raw and desperate flashed in his eyes. Then it sealed shut again. "Pack what you can carry. I'll drive you to the bus station." Ethan laughed once, a short, broken sound. "After everything, you're going to drop me at Greyhound like I'm some stray you found on the side of the road?" Daniel didn't answer. He just turned and walked out. Ethan stood motionless for a long time. Then he reached under the bed for the duffel bag he had never fully unpacked. 11 months earlier he had arrived at this address with that same bag, soaked from a spring downpour, 19 rejection letters in his backpack, and the certainty that no one would ever want him again. Now history was repeating itself, only this time it hurt worse because he had let himself believe the lie that maybe, just maybe, he had finally found a place. He packed in silence. Laptop. 3 changes of clothes. The photo of his sister at her graduation, the only family picture he still kept. The small wooden cross Daniel had carved for him last Christmas. The one with E plus D plus M plus C plus L plus S plus J burned into the back in childish handwriting. He almost left it behind. In the end, he slipped it into the side pocket. When he came downstairs, Daniel was waiting by the front door, keys in hand, staring at the floor like it had personally offended him. They didn't speak during the 23-minute drive to the bus station. The waiting room smelled of bleach and old coffee. A fluorescent light flickered above the ticket counter. Ethan bought a one-way ticket to Pittsburgh, far enough to disappear, close enough that he could still pretend he had somewhere to go. Daniel stood 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, shoulders rigid. When the bus was called, Ethan turned. Daniel looked up. Their eyes met. For one heartbeat it seemed like he might say something, anything that would change the ending. Instead he said, "I'm sorry." Ethan nodded once. "Yeah, me too." He walked through the glass doors without looking back. The bus smelled like wet upholstery and despair. Ethan chose a seat near the back, pressed his forehead against the cold window, and watched the streetlights smear into long golden streaks as the bus pulled away from everything he had almost called home. He didn't cry until they crossed the state line. Rewind 11 months. March. Rain so heavy it sounded like gravel hitting the roof. Ethan had been couch surfing for 4 weeks after his last landlord discovered the dating app on his phone and decided people like you weren't welcome under his roof. The church group that promised emergency housing had ghosted him after the second interview. His savings were down to $147 and change. He found the listing on a quiet subreddit for people in crisis. Room available. Christian household. No drugs, no drinking, no drama. Background check required. Must be willing to help with children. Ethan almost scrolled past it. Then he read the rest. Single father. 5 kids ages 3 to 14. Looking for someone responsible who can help with after-school pickups and light chores in exchange for rent-free room and board while you get back on your feet. Serious inquiries only. Daniel. Ethan sent the message at 1:43 a.m. He expected silence. Instead, a reply came 40 minutes later. Can you do a video call tomorrow at 7 p.m.? He said yes. The next evening he borrowed a friend's apartment for better Wi-Fi and better lighting. He wore the only clean button-down he had left. When the call connected, the first thing he saw was chaos. A little girl with pigtails was screaming because someone stole her marker. A teenage boy was yelling at a younger one about whose turn it was on the Xbox. Somewhere in the background a toddler was banging a plastic drum. Then Daniel appeared, lifting the toddler onto his hip in one smooth motion. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under hazel eyes. Short brown hair that needed a trim. Flannel shirt with a faint stain on the shoulder that might have been baby food. But when he smiled, small, cautious, polite, Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. I'm Daniel. Sorry about the circus. Ethan managed a laugh. It's fine. I like circuses. They talked for almost an hour. Daniel asked careful questions. Ethan gave careful answers. Neither mentioned the word gay. Not once. At the end Daniel said, I'd like to run a background check. If everything clears, you can move in next weekend. Ethan blinked. Just like that. Daniel shrugged. I've got 5 kids and a full-time job at the mill. I need help more than I need perfection. So Ethan moved in. The first week was awkward. He learned the kids' names fast. Mia, 8, Caleb, 14. The twins Lucas and Liam, 11, Sophie, 3. He learned Daniel's routines. Up at 5:30, coffee black, kids to school, 12-hour shift at the steel mill, home by 6:30, dinner, homework, baths, bedtime stories, collapse. He learned how Daniel never complained, never raised his voice, never let the exhaustion show in front of the children. He also learned Daniel prayed before every meal, went to church 3 times a week, taught Sunday school and kept a worn Bible on the nightstand. Ethan kept his own faith quiet. He had stopped going to church after the 3rd pastor told him he was welcome, but not as you are. Still, he helped. He picked up kids from soccer and piano. He helped with fractions and spelling lists. He read Sophie the Very Hungry Caterpillar 17 times in one evening when she had a fever. Daniel watched him with the children the way a man watches someone handle something fragile and irreplaceable. One night after everyone was asleep, they sat on the back porch sharing the last beer Daniel kept hidden in the garage for bad days. You're good with them, Daniel said quietly. They're easy to love, Ethan answered. Daniel looked at him for a long time. Most people run when they see 5 kids and a widower. I'm not most people. No, Daniel said softly. You're not. That was the first time Ethan felt the shift. Not lust. Not even attraction yet. Just recognition. The quiet understanding that someone saw him. Not the label, not the sin, just him, and didn't flinch. Months passed. They fell into a rhythm that felt dangerously like family. Daniel started leaving notes on the fridge. Thank you for today. Don't forget Mia has dance at 4. You're appreciated. Ethan started leaving notes back. The kids began calling him by name without hesitation. Sophie started climbing into his lap during movie nights. Caleb asked him for advice about girls. The twins fought over who got to sit next to him at dinner. And Daniel started looking at him longer, lingering in doorways, brushing shoulders in the kitchen, asking questions that felt personal instead of polite. One rainy Saturday in November, while the kids were at a birthday party, Daniel found Ethan folding laundry in the basement. He stood in the doorway watching for a long minute. Then he said, I think I'm in trouble. Ethan looked up. What kind? Daniel took one step closer. The kind where I can't stop thinking about kissing you. The air left the room. Ethan set the towel down slowly. Daniel. I know, Daniel whispered. I know what the Bible says. I know what I've preached for 15 years. I know I'm supposed to hate this feeling. His voice cracked. But I don't. Ethan stood. They were only 3 feet apart. Daniel looked terrified and determined at the same time. I'm not asking you to fix me, he said. I'm not even asking you to promise anything. I just needed someone to know. Ethan closed the distance. Their first kiss tasted like fear and relief and coffee and everything they had both been running from. It lasted 11 seconds. Changed everything. For the next 4 months they lived in a secret that felt both sacred and suffocating. They never spoke about it in daylight. They never touched in front of the children. But at night, when the house was quiet, Daniel would tap twice on Ethan's door. Ethan would open it. They would sit on the edge of the mattress, shoulders touching, sometimes holding hands, sometimes just breathing the same air. They talked about everything except the future. Daniel told Ethan about Sarah, his wife who died of leukemia when Sophie was 9 months old. How he still kept her robe in the back of the closet. How he still talked to her when the kids were asleep. Ethan told Daniel about being kicked out at 17. About the conversion therapy his parents paid for. About the night he walked 20 miles in January just to feel something other than shame. They never said, I love you. They didn't need to. But secrets have weight, and this one was starting to crush them both. Daniel began missing church events. He stopped teaching Sunday school. Whispers started in the congregation. The elders called him in for a meeting. They asked if everything was okay at home. Daniel lied. He came home shaking. That night he didn't tap on Ethan's door. He sat in the garage until 3 a.m. with the light off. Ethan found him there, head in his hands. I can't lose them, Daniel whispered. The kids, the church, my job, my whole life is built on this. Ethan knelt in front of him. Then let me go. Daniel looked up, eyes red. I don't want to. But you will, Ethan said gently. Eventually, because you have to choose. Daniel grabbed his hand so hard it hurt. I hate that you're right. They sat like that until dawn. The next 3 weeks were a slow hemorrhage. Daniel became distant, short-tempered with the kids, avoided eye contact with Ethan. Ethan started looking for apartments he couldn't afford. Then came the night of the church potluck. Daniel had promised to bring dessert. He forgot. One of the deacons, Tom Harlan, a man who had never liked Ethan, offered to drive by and drop it off. Tom knocked on the front door at 7:42 p.m. Ethan answered. Tom saw him. Saw the way Ethan was wearing one of Daniel's old flannel shirts because the heat was out again. Saw the easy familiarity. Saw the truth. He didn't say anything that night. But the next morning after service, Tom cornered Daniel in the parking lot. And everything unraveled. Daniel came home at 2 p.m. instead of 6:30. He walked straight to the guest room where Ethan was helping Lucas with a science project. He stood in the doorway. Everyone knows, he said. Lucas looked up, confused. Knows what, Dad? Daniel didn't answer. He just looked at Ethan with something close to grief. That was the moment Ethan realized Daniel had already made his choice. Not love. Not truth. Survival. The weeks after Pittsburgh were a gray blur. Ethan found a room in a shared house near the university. He worked nights at a 24-hour diner. He smiled at customers. He counted tips. He slept 4 hours a night. He didn't call. He didn't text. He tried not to think about 5 kids who probably didn't understand why he left. He failed. In April, he received a letter. No return address. Just his name in Daniel's careful handwriting. He almost threw it away. Instead, he opened it on the fire escape at 3 a.m. Inside was a single photograph. Sophie, age 4 now, holding a drawing of a house with 6 stick figures. One had a blue hoodie like Ethan always wore. Above it, in crayon, "We miss a fan." On the back, Daniel had written only 4 words. I was wrong. Ethan stared at those words until his vision swam. He didn't write back, but he kept the photo in his wallet. Summer came. Ethan started community college classes. He got a better job at a bookstore. He made a few friends who didn't ask too many questions. He told himself he was healing. Then one Tuesday in September the phone rang. A known number. He almost didn't answer. Ethan? Daniel's voice. Rough. Exhausted. Like he hadn't slept in days. Ethan's heart stopped. What happened? Caleb ran away. The world tilted. He left a note, Daniel said. Said he was going to find you. Said you were the only one who ever listened. Ethan was already grabbing his keys. Where would he go? I don't know. He took the Greyhound schedule from the kitchen drawer. He has $60 from mowing lawns. Ethan closed his eyes. I'm coming. He caught the next bus back. The ride felt longer than the first one. When he arrived at the Whitaker house at 11 p.m., every light was on. Daniel opened the door before Ethan could knock. He looked 10 years older. They didn't hug. They didn't speak. Daniel just stepped aside. Inside, four children sat on the couch in their pajamas, eyes wide and frightened. Mia ran to him first. She threw her arms around his waist and sobbed. Ethan held her, looked over her head at Daniel. Daniel's face was wet. I called the police, he said. They're looking, but he's not in town. He's gone. Ethan knelt so he was eye level with the younger ones. We're going to find him, he said. I promise. He didn't know if it was a lie. They searched all night. Bus stations, truck stops, parks, the library Caleb loved. Nothing. At 4 a.m. Daniel broke. He sat on the curb outside the Greyhound station and put his head in his hands. I did this, he whispered. I drove both of you away. Ethan sat beside him. For the first time in months he touched Daniel, put a hand on his shoulder. You made a choice, Ethan said. We all paid for it. Daniel looked at him. Can you ever forgive me? Ethan thought about it. I don't know, he said honestly. But right now Caleb needs us to work together. That's all that matters. Dawn came. At 7:12 a.m. Daniel's phone rang. It was the police in Columbus, Ohio. They had found Caleb sleeping on a bench outside the bus terminal. He was cold, hungry, scared, but alive. They drove 4 hours to pick him up. When Caleb saw Ethan in the station lobby, he froze. Then he ran. Ethan caught him, held him so tight neither of them could breathe. I'm sorry, Caleb sobbed into his shoulder. I just wanted things to be like before. Ethan kissed the top of his head. I know. Daniel stood a few feet away, tears streaming down his face, not moving. Caleb looked at his father. You hurt him, he said. You hurt both of us. Daniel nodded. I know. Caleb walked over and hugged his dad. But it wasn't forgiveness. It was truce. They brought Caleb home. The house felt different, smaller, quieter. The children watched the adults like they were waiting for the next explosion. Daniel asked Ethan to stay. Not forever, just until things settled. Ethan said yes. Not because he trusted Daniel again. Because 5 kids needed stability more than adults needed pride. For 3 weeks they coexisted carefully. Separate bedrooms. Polite conversation. No tashing. No late-night talks. Then one evening after the kids were asleep, Daniel found Ethan on the back porch staring at the stars. He sat beside him, not too close. I've been talking to my therapist, Daniel said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You have a therapist? Since April. Court-mandated after I had a panic attack in the pulpit and couldn't finish the sermon. Ethan almost smiled. How's that going? Terrible, but necessary. Silence. Daniel took a breath. I told him everything. About Sarah. About fear. About you. Ethan waited. He asked me a question I can't stop thinking about. What question? Daniel looked straight ahead. If God is love, why are we so afraid of it when it doesn't look the way we expected? Ethan felt something crack inside his chest. I don't have an answer, Daniel continued. But I'm starting to think I've spent my whole life worshiping safety instead of God. Ethan turned to him. What does that mean for us? Daniel met his eyes. I don't know, but I'm done hiding. I told the elders I'm stepping down from leadership. I told them why. They're voting next month. Most of them will ask me to leave the church. Ethan exhaled slowly. And the kids? I'll fight for them, whatever it takes. Another long silence. Then Daniel said the words Ethan never thought he'd hear. I love you. I've loved you since the night you read Sophie that damn caterpillar book for the 17th time. I was just too scared to say it. Ethan felt the tears come. He didn't wipe them away. I love you too, he said. But love isn't enough if you're going to keep choosing fear every time it gets hard. Daniel nodded. I know. So what now? Daniel reached out, hesitated, then took Ethan's hand. Now I learn how to be brave. They sat like that until the sky turned pink. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The church voted. Daniel was asked to leave. He found a new job at a factory across town. Lower pay, longer hours. But no one asked about his personal life. The kids struggled. Some days they were angry, some days confused. But they saw their father trying, really trying, and slowly the anger softened. Ethan stayed. Not in the guest room. In Daniel's bed. They didn't rush. They didn't pretend everything was fixed. They went to therapy separately and together. They fought. They apologized. They learned. 1 year after Caleb ran away, on a quiet October evening, Daniel gathered all 6 of them in the living room. He looked at Ethan, then at the children. I've spent most of my life thinking love had rules, he said. Turns out the only rule is that it's supposed to make us better people. And the person who makes me better is sitting right here. He reached for Ethan's hand. The kids watched. Mia spoke first. Does this mean a fan's staying forever? Daniel smiled through tears. If he'll have us. Ethan looked around at the faces he had missed so much. Then he looked at Daniel. I already have you, he said. No one cheered. No music played. But Sophie climbed into Ethan's lap. Caleb leaned against his shoulder. The twins high-fived. Mia hugged them both. And Daniel rested his forehead against Ethan's. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was honest. And sometimes honesty is the bravest thing a person can choose. Was Daniel right to protect his children by following the only path he knew? Or was he wrong to sacrifice love on the altar of certainty?